Well, last week was, you might say, eventful. It began with three major medical organizations calling for the prosecution of high-profile social media personalities who have been reporting on and criticizing so-called gender-affirming care. Having extremely well-funded and powerful medical associations not so subtly single me out and call for my arrest would have been enough activity for 1 week, as far as I'm concerned. But very next day, Media Matters launched their most extensive hit piece against me yet in a transparent attempt to derail our campaign against gender ideology. And while this was all going on, we were also in the first week of our What is a Woman college tour, where throngs of protesters complained that my presence was destabilizing their existence and responded by defiantly singing Bohemian Rhapsody in a vocal performance that resembled the sound of 7,000 chickens choking to death all at once. And then came the big win on Friday, the capstone to all of these events. At the end of a week where I think our enemies thought that they'd landed a knockout blow, it was announced by Vanderbilt in a letter to state lawmakers that they would be pausing all gender transition procedures on minors. So they caved. They surrendered. For perhaps the first time in recent memory, anyway, a left-wing institution caved to pressure from the right. Very rarely does that happen, but we beat them. Battle's not close to over. The fight continues, of course, as we now move on to make gender transitions on minors illegal across the entire state, and then we move across the entire country. But this was a major victory, and I think perhaps in some ways unprecedented. And we'll have much more to say about it in a few minutes, but the week was not over with the Vanderbilt news. That night, Jon Stewart opened the second season of his Apple TV show, even though nobody watched the first season. He got a second season anyway. A little bit more of that left-wing privilege that he's benefiting from. Most people didn't even know that the first season happened, but it did. Season 2, episode 1 comes along and focuses on the topic of gender. It is, in effect, Jon Stewart's response to our documentary, What is a Woman, and even features a brief clip of the film. The left has hailed this episode as the ultimate takedown of the conservative conspiracy theory that women don't have penises. It just demolishes all of us, we're told. So to begin the show today, we're going to go through what are being celebrated as the most compelling and persuasive moments from this episode. And we will show that Jon Stewart is a shallow, spineless, left-wing hack who has long had the reputation as a free thinker and a sort of bold comedic mind, even though he has always simply adopted the mainstream corporate position on literally every topic. And that's what he's done now on gender. So we start with a clip shared by the show's Twitter account. And the caption of this clip on their Twitter account was, "What is a woman? It's a question that suddenly is everywhere. And it turns out the answer is complicated." Jon breaks down the gender binary and gender spectrum in this week's episode.
We are in a new dawn of gender and sex complexity, where those who don't fit into a simple binary are meant to be seen with humanity. It wasn't always like this, people. As recently as, let's say, the 1990s, early 2000s, people were making reductive jokes about the subject. What can I say? The joke rhymed.
It would be sad to see Jon Stewart apologizing for his past jokes, disavowing his previous belief that men can't have babies, and groveling for acceptance from a bunch of purple-haired 22-year-olds. But you must realize that Jon Stewart has always been a pathetic fraud. This is fully in keeping with his brand. It's still a sickening, stomach-churning display of self-debasement, as revolting and perverse as watching someone eat themselves on camera. But it's exactly what you ought to expect from a lifelong shill. Let's continue.
Any moment of progressive visibility will be met with a vicious backlash.
There are two genders.
There are two genders, and everyone knows it.
Ain't but two genders.
That last guy sounded like it's an emergency and we're running out of genders. Everyone, there ain't but two genders.
So here you see the attempt to make a completely self-evident and obvious statement seem absurd. The audience, with the enhancement of a laugh track, giggles at the statement that there are only two genders. Like, this is the move. If you just laugh at something, then that automatically makes it laughable, expecting us to believe that the claim is funny just because they're laughing at it. But they can't make this objectively correct statement funny by laughing about it any more than they can make a statement like, the world is round, or Jon Stewart is a gutless, smirking slug funny by laughing about it. These are all just simply objective, self-evident observations about the physical world. It's really not funny at all, but let's continue along.
The point is clear. The human race is defined by a simple binary, a black and white understanding. There are men and there are women, and never the twain shall meet.
Trump is an alpha male.
Well, okay, yes, there are obviously men who are more man than other men, but that's an aberration.
Beta, gamma.
Okay, there's an entire Greek alphabet, a continuum of masculinity, but that doesn't mean
Cuck, pajama boy, soy boy.
Girly man.
I hope the children are out of the room. Clearly, masculinity appears to be on a dimmer, not an on-off switch, but ladies are different.
I was a big tomboy.
These purple-haired angry freaks.
Rabid feminist.
Cat lady.
High rolling bimbos.
Pretty girly girl.
My God, what a cruise line buffet of the gradients in American gender expression. Turns out there's a lot of non-binary happening between the binaries.
This is John's whole shtick, by the way. He goes back to the Daily Show. Just play a clip of someone saying something normal and then mug for the camera like it's, an episode of The Office. Just someone says something normal and you look at the camera like, and then that's the joke. It's like automatically that thing is now funny. But these are all just descriptions of personality traits. And most of them are labels used to describe the same sorts of people. So how does this at all even slightly call into question the existence of the man-woman binary? Nobody ever said, John, that every man is exactly the same as every other man, or that every woman is the same as every other woman. Squares can also come in many different shapes and colors, and many different sizes and colors, not shapes. That's the point. A square is still a square. So you can color a different color. You can have a big square, a little square. There are lots of different ways you can describe squares depending on how you decorate them, but a square is still a square. You can do a lot of interesting things with a square, but you can't make it a circle, is the point. So is that really the best that Stewart can do? Just like pointing out that there are different personality traits, different ways that you can describe individual men, different insults you can use against individual women? Is that it? Is that all you have? Is that what the left considers some kind of definitive smackdown of the gender binary? Surely he must have more in his arsenal. I mean, he doesn't, of course, but we'll keep watching anyway.
That hasn't stopped the traditionalists from deploying their newest weapon in the culture war arsenal, the obvious gotcha question.
The real basic question, what is a woman?
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
For all of recorded history, people have known what a woman is.
Yes! All of recorded history! It was simple. Until like a year ago. The answer to what is a woman has always been the same. It's a woman is a deformity that occurred in the ordinary course of nature. I'm sorry, that's Aristotle. I apologize. I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. I meant a woman is a person who has no legal existence once married. I'm sorry, that's early American coverture law. That's not right. No, throughout history, it's not a gotcha question. A woman is 30 shekels. I'm sorry, that's Leviticus.
Yes, John, those are different things that different people and institutions have said about women over the course of history. But what is your point? Aristotle and the author of Leviticus and everyone else that you might name from ancient history all agreed on what a woman is fundamentally and physically. They all agreed that a woman can be defined because if they didn't, then they couldn't have said anything about women in the first place. So see, John, that's what you're not understanding. You can't even talk about them. You can't say anything about them at all unless there's some shared understanding of what this entity is. You know, in 2020, there were over 1,000 significant online data breaches in the U.S., which left almost 156 million people's records exposed. That was all in 1 year. That includes sensitive information related to your children. Now, you wouldn't let your kids walk home from school without telling them not to talk to strangers or get into any windowless vans, but you let them go online every day without a VPN? To protect your family's privacy when they go online, you've got to use ExpressVPN. Internet service providers know every single website you visit. ISPs can sell this information to ad companies and tech giants who then use your data to target you. You really want all these advertisers knowing who's in your household, what your kids like to watch, how to target them with whatever they're looking to sell. ExpressVPN protects your privacy without slowing your connection, no matter how many users are in your household. Unlike other VPNs, you don't even realize you have it on. It's so easy to use. Just download the app on your phone or computer, tap one button, and you're protected. Simple as that. No one in your family is too old or too young to figure out how to use it. So secure your family's online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/MattWalshShow today. Use my link and you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/MattWalshShow. expressvpn.com/MattWalshShow. What you're proving is that over history, people have had different ideas about the legal standing of women, about their place in society, and so on and so on. But you haven't proved that there was ever, at any time, ever in history, ever until just now, even the slightest disagreement on the definition of the word. No, indeed, you've proven the opposite, if anything. I mean, there are people who would say different things about Jon Stewart. Some people would say he's a comedic genius. On the other hand, people with functioning brains say that he's a bland, boring chump, desperate for approval. These are all adjectives, some of them more accurate than others. They don't make Jon Stewart into some kind of abstract, undefinable entity whose very objective existence is now up for debate. But Stewart isn't done here. He also interviews Leslie Rutledge, who's the Arkansas Attorney General and a great American who's helped to spearhead the efforts in her state to make it illegal to sexually mutilate children. Yet, not every great American is necessarily equipped to successfully respond to a partisan hack like Stewart while the cameras are rolling. Okay? Not everyone is going to be good in that context. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Rutledge really is, which is exactly why she was chosen for this segment, but let's watch a little bit of this.
Why would the state of Arkansas step in to override parents, physicians, psychiatrists, endocrinologists who have developed guidelines? Why would you override those guidelines?
Well, I think it's important that all of those physicians, all of those experts, for every single one of them, there's an expert that says we don't need to allow children to be able to take those medications. That there are many instances where...
But you know that's not true. You know it's not for everyone there's one. These are the established...
Well, I don't know that's not true. I don't know that...
Then why would you pass a law then if you don't know that that's true? Wouldn't you?
Well,
have
I know
done
that
so?
there are doctors and that we had plenty of people come and testify before our legislature who said that we have 98% of the young people who have gender dysphoria, that they are able to move past that. And once they have the help that they need, no longer suffer from gender dysphoria. 98% without that medical treatment.
That's an incredibly made up figure. That doesn't comport with any of the studies or documentation that exists from these medical organizations. What medical association are you talking about of these doctors?
Well, we have all of that in our legislative history, and we'll be glad to provide that to you.
Okay. Jon Stewart was, of course, extremely careful about which conservative he invited to speak to him about this issue. I don't think I'm inflating myself in any respect by saying that I am primarily the one who's brought the what is a woman question to the forefront, and yet Stewart didn't reach out to me for an interview. If he had, I would have eagerly accepted. And here's how I would have responded. Instead of making the mistake of getting into a credentialism contest, as Rutledge does here, takes the bait. Once you do that, it's over. Okay, that's all this conversation is now. I would have said something like this. Jon, you're coming out of the gate with appeals to authority because you don't have any thoughts of your own. That's the first problem. There was a time when a similar appeal to authority could have been used to prove that the earth is the center of the universe, or that bloodletting is the cure for every known disease. Okay, there was a time when every medical expert in the world would have told you that if you want to cure any disease, cut yourself open and bleed it out. In this case, your brainless appeals to authority are even more asinine because the authorities you mention all have an obvious financial stake in the very medical practices you're seeking to justify. So what you're telling me is that people who make millions of dollars mutilating kids all say it's a good idea to mutilate kids. Wow, breaking news. The tobacco industry also has funded studies showing that smoking isn't so bad for you. Will you be citing those on your next show, Jon? But this is all beside the point. The burden of proof is not on me to explain to you why we shouldn't castrate and sterilize children. You guys are the ones coming along out of nowhere demanding that we start engaging in those kinds of horrific practices. So you tell me what your evidence is. What studies are you talking about? Tell me, Jon, which credible long-term studies prove that it's a good idea to castrate and mutilate kids? Which ones? Which ones? Here, I'll help you. There are none. They don't exist. These medical institutions don't have studies to support their practices. Our kids are the study. This current generation is the guinea pig, the lab rats. That's the part you're leaving out, you sycophantic gas bag. Now, I'd like to tell you that this conversation progresses from here, but it really doesn't. Stewart spends the entire interview obsessing over the guidelines of medical organizations. That's the only thing they talk about. So, well, this organization said we should do it, so we should. That's literally all he has. That's it. His whole case comes down to, these people said we should castrate kids. Which people? Well, the people who make billions of dollars doing it. Oh, great. Good to know. He also lies, of course, and misrepresents the data. Let's check that out.
I've got some bad news for you. Parents with children who have gender dysphoria have lost children to suicide and depression.
They absolutely
because it's
have.
acute. And so these mainstream medical organizations have developed guidelines through peer-reviewed data and studies. And through those guidelines, they've improved mental health outcomes.
What data is that, Jon? What are you talking about? You're saying that there is data showing that a child's long-term mental health is improved by castrating and sterilizing and mutilating him? Which data exactly is that? Where is that data? Can you cite it? See, Rutledge unfortunately never flips it around on him. He's very lucky that she never thinks to say, what are you talking about? Can you show me? What are you talking about? Can you provide an example? Can you say anything about it other than insisting that it exists? No, you can't, because it doesn't exist. It never has existed, and it never will. You're lying. And fortunately for you, your guest didn't call you out on that. But I will. And I'd do it to your face if you had the courage to sit down with someone who won't be so easily railroaded. But in some ways, I'm grateful for the Jon Stewart episode. He's grateful for it because it's the first time anyone has paid attention to him in like 8 years. I'm grateful because it's being heralded as the best defense of gender ideology ever put to film, and yet it's laughably weak and can be dismantled with almost no effort at all. And that really tells you everything you need to know about gender ideology. If you want to join my exclusive fan base, or a cult, as really that's what it is, we're forming a cult, then all you got to do is click the subscribe button and ring the bell below this video to stay up to date with all my content. And if you want even more, you can watch or listen to my show at thedailywire.com, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Looking forward to welcoming you to the Sweet Baby Gang.